Hello and welcome to Naming in an AI Age. Although today I think we should really consider naming in an EV age or in a technology age. We really think about all the ways that naming has evolved over time based on the digital era. Should every name have its own naming system? Should every name have its own brand name? What do we really need to think about when it comes to naming?
Out of context, it's easy to look at a name that's more of a descriptive name. It isn't real brand like and say, well, that's a crappy name, right? Why didn't they come up with something more creative? Well, there are many reasons for that, right? Had you understood the scenario, the situation, you would have said, that's absolutely the best name, or if they're willing to spend a lot of money, right? And depending upon the competitive set, and if all the competitors have boring descriptive names, and they're willing to put the time and effort into it, then a cool brand like name is definitely the way to go. Certain types of names will work really well for certain constituencies in terms of age, gender, parts of the world that they're in. Other types of names would fall flat.
What are some other things that we may not consider as a layperson looking in to the things that had to be thought about when coming up with a name?
How is the name going to be used? Dunkin, as an example. Well, Dunkin came out with Dunkalatte for their new latte coffee. And the criticism was, well, that's a boring, ho-hum name, lazy name. What are the constraints that Dunkin's working within, and what are the goals that they're trying to accomplish, right? So they have a menu board, right? And they have some consistency in the names across that menu board, not in every case. And they want to lean into their Dunkin equity. So they want to build names that differentiate, hey, this is a Dunkin branded product. And they want to quickly communicate what it is. Well, it's a latte. Dunkalatte doesn't require hardly any brain power. You're driving up to the Dunkin window and you want to order a latte. And that's what it is. You don't have to ask any questions. Maybe you can pick a flavor and you're done. Mm-hmm. I think it's a great name in that constraint of, you got a menu board, you got a bunch of other names. You're not going to spend a ton of money building some foo-foo brand and then cause confusion and have your customers try to figure out what exactly is that thing. That's a totally different environment, right, than if you're a very upscale automotive brand, right, and you're selling a new $40,000 EV. And you're going to put some money behind that, right? You're going to drive people to that dealership or to the website. And you're maybe in a situation where your competitors' names are esoteric and meaningless. And so you have a different target. They're going to spend 40 grand, not $4 for a coffee. They're going to put a lot more time and effort into what that decision's all about. And a name that is a little bit cooler, that has more of a story, they're going to spend more time listening to that story.
There's one thing we're thinking about brand equity, specifically with the coffee situation. But if it's an EV and, some people use, like, they have, the Mustang Mach-E versus one that has a specific Model Y or Model X, I think specifically with Tesla. What's the difference? And is there a risk of overpromising and under-delivering when it comes to the Mustang is known for a certain thing, but if you have an EV and something goes wrong with that, is there some risk involved with there? Does that play a difference in the naming situation?
The Mustang is it's a hollowed brand name. I mean, it's been around for decades. There's a certain sporty image associated with the Mustang. The Mach as a sub-brand, has got also a very storied history. You think about Mach 3, Mach 5, Mach 7, there's a performance implication there. When you put the E on the end of it instead of a number, it does take you to electric, so it's sort of cool. And you're not diminishing the value of both the Mustang brand or the Mach brand with some other longer, maybe cool name, but then it sort of takes away from the other two things that you're trying to build equity in or maintain equity in and update and refresh. First and foremost, we want Mustang to still be a very hip, relevant brand, especially for the younger folks that are now buying the car for the first time or upgrading. We still want to retain, though, that equity for the older buyers that still want to think of themselves as younger. So there are lots of decisions that go into that kind of branding and naming and thought process. It doesn't take a lot of brand building to put a little E on the end of a Mach and for people to sort of get like, oh, well, that E stands for electric. I mean, that's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Whereas you look at some of the other car that are EVs now, and they've got the iX4 something or other, or I mean, they're just meaningless gobbledygook. And it's much harder to figure out, was that electric or not? I mean, what is that?
Using a numerical system is not always helpful if you have to discontinue a specific brand and stuff like that. Would you want to, and I guess with the alphabet too, just depending on, unless you want that letter to specifically stand for something.
Does your naming system, if you need to have a good, better, best relationship? So this can be for automobiles, like BMW has the i3, the i5, and the i7. Well, if you're a BMW customer and you're very familiar with the Series 3, Series 5, or the Series 7, then that's not a big leap. You know, putting a little I in there for the electric connotation makes a lot of sense. And you get it because you're part of the BMW ecosystem. You've been exposed and been paying attention to their advertising for years. If BMW is trying to attract a lot of new people into their ecosystem that aren't that familiar with the different series names, it's not a very good name, right? Because it doesn't have any emotional cachet, any appeal. And it also might be a little bit too limiting down the road if all of a sudden BMW wants to put something in between the i3 and the i5. Well, they call it i4. Great. Now you've got good, better, best. i3, i4, i5. Well, then let's say in a couple of years they want to put something between the i4 and the i5. Well, then what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
Well, is it an i4.5? And the credit card companies we worked for over the decades, you know, you had the silver card. Believe it or not, at one point there was a silver credit card, and that was viewed as more premium than the standard. And then, of course, they came up with the gold. Then they came up with the platinum. And then it was like, well, what comes after platinum? And that gets to be, well, you got black, the black card.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of different than gold, you know, or you've got titanium. Well, is titanium really a better card than platinum? So when you come up with a naming system where you're going to have this hierarchical good, better, best, you need to think about over time, does it give you the flexibility to add additional offerings anywhere, right? Not just at the high end and not just at the low end, but often in between. And now you're sort of in a pickle because what's better than silver, but not as good as gold? Silver plus? I don't know. That's part of the problem.
Man, I can just see, you know, those old comic strips, and I guess they still have them now on some of these, where you have the explicatives and it's like, and they have all these little symbols, like we're just going to have a name with just a bunch of little symbols at the end of it and have to figure out what that means. But yeah, no, that's super helpful to think of flexibility within a naming system, not pigeonholing yourself into a certain structure to where later on you're not able to expand as needed. So I think that's super helpful. Anything else you have for us?
Never ever discount context. There's so many things that go into picking the right kind of name beyond just how did that name initially hit you, right? It's what is the brand strategy? What other names that you may already have does the new name need to work with? How disruptive or revolutionary do you want the name to be versus evolutionary? And then the targets. Usually it's not just a single focus. You've got a primary and a secondary and a tertiary. Is the name legally available? Does the name mean anything that's offensive to one of the key constituencies that you're targeting? Is your vision over time to go outside the US? What other languages, what other cultures, what other considerations should there be? So it's a fun journey, but it's not a simple journey. And that's why we've been doing this for almost 40 years.
And every layer is another layer peeled that we try to get to the center of a good name. So we appreciate that. Thank you for all your insight today, Mike, and stay tuned with us as we talk more about naming in an AI age.